We are the weirdos, mister.
Welcome back to the Final Ghouls of Horror. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Al.
We're three people who love horror and are coming at it from different perspectives of who we are, as well as very different levels of experience with the genre, which we're always excited to talk about. And this week, we're diving into the Summer of Fear as we take a look at the first two films in the Fear Street trilogy.
Are you okay?
That was 1978. 5,937 days ago.
Shady Side, a history of horror has earned it the nickname Killer Capital USA.
What's happening to us?
These massacres happen in Shady Side over and over.
You were the only person who survived. How do we end this?
You have to go back to where it all started.
All right, so let's start this off by asking what is your guys' connection, history, familiarity with the Fear Street franchise? I'm talking about the books, the movies, obviously. Elle, what is, I believe you are at least were familiar with some of the books before the movies hit, right?
Yeah, like I'd seen them around. I never really had the opportunity to get them because I know that you guys have your Scholastic Book Fair thing.
Yes.
We have a version of it here where they send a catalog and we share the catalog around.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get to see that they exist, but I was never allowed to order them. And by the time I was able to get them, I had moved on to like the more adult horror, or even like going back in time to the Tales from the Crypt comic book adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I am vaguely familiar with their existence, longtime Goosebumps fan, and yeah.
Fair enough. Holly, how about you? Were you familiar with the books before? Beyond being a worm, were you familiar with the books before the movies?
I was aware they existed, and I'm honestly amazed that I'd never read them. I think like people around me were reading them, and I was reading that kind of stuff, and I don't know why I never picked one up because
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing them at the book fair. But I think at that point I was a little too obsessed about real life paranormal stuff. And so I would check out all of the books on ghosts, weird paranormal stuff, strange creatures.
Fair enough. This whole era of teen horror stuff completely missed me by. The R.L. Stein, that includes the Goosebumps stuff. Christopher Pike, as we previously discussed, Are You Afraid of the Dark? All of that stuff I was slightly too old for some of it. I don't know when the R.L. Stein stuff actually came out now that I think about it. But at the age that it would have even hit for me, I had already jumped ahead to like Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft and shit like that. So I knew the books existed in a vague sense. I think Goosebumps is a little bit more well known than the Fear Street books, but I'd never read them, and honestly, probably hadn't thought of them in years before we hear all of a sudden, hey, there's this movie franchise coming based off of these R.L. Stein books, and they're eventually coming to Netflix. So this week we're going to be covering the first two films, 1994 and 1978. Next episode we're going to be doing 1666 and sort of a wrap up, and this is all leading into, because for those who aren't aware, the next film in the series is hitting Netflix later this month in Fear Street Prom Queen. So we're going to be covering that for the episode after these two. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk a little bit about Holly. Tell us a little bit how this film series came about.
So, the Fear Street books were first optioned back in 1997 by Hollywood Pictures, the Disney label for more mature content, with plans to develop it as a Scream-like franchise and a Fear Street attraction at Disney World. However, nothing became of that. That might be because Viacom had a separate deal in 1997 to a Fear Street TV series, and the pilot was bought by ABC, which is owned by Disney because they own everything. The pilot aired once, absolutely bombed, and was not well liked. And I'm speculating here because that may have given Disney cold feet. Anyway, we don't get any news until 2015 when 20th Century Fox, before it was also owned by Disney, and Chernin Entertainment began developing a film series. Kyle Killen was brought on to write the script for the first film, and it was later as a trilogy, with Lee Janiak directing and rewriting alongside Phil Graziadei. The movies were shot back to back in early to mid 2019. Disney at that point were the owners of 20th Century Fox. The first film was set to release in theaters in June 2020, but then 2020 happened. Disney always has a crowded release schedule, and the pandemic gave them a backlog of content, and Netflix stepped in to acquire the films. Fear Street 1994 was released on July 2nd, 2021, as the first in a one film per week release plan, dubbed the Summer of Fear, with Part 2, 1978, released on July 8th, and Part 3, 1666, released on July 16th. Some fun facts are the Fear Street books show up in the films a couple of times, specifically in the opening of the first film, as a woman buys the wrong number at the bookstore, which has several such books shelved under the name Robert Lawrence. The Wrong Number has one of its main characters, a girl named Dina, the same as the lead character in 1994. The film has ties to another Netflix horror franchise, as both Maya Hawke and Sadie Sink, who play Heather in 1994 and Ziggy in 1978, are part of the Stranger Things cast. And finally, two of our core characters in 1978 are named after the Friday 13th survivors, in Alice and Tommy, the latter a reference to Tommy Jarvis. And one more thing to add to this is I live in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and many scenes, especially in 1994, in the town with Ruby Lane, were filmed in downtown Lawrenceville, about a mile and a half down the street from me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I knew that I knew that it was filmed in Georgia. So much stuff is filmed in
Oh
Georgia at
yeah,
this point, particularly around Atlanta. I just assume it's somewhere nebulous. I never make the connection like, yeah, that could be right next to where you guys live potentially.
on the mall was because this was North DeKalb Mall, and that was see at first when I first saw this and I heard it was filmed in Georgia, I thought it was the same mall as Stranger Things. It is not,
Mhm.
because the Stranger Things mall from season 3 is the mall that I basically grew up at because my mother was a manager of one of the stores there.
Right.
And I was very familiar, though, with this mall in the beginning of 1994, but that's because it's the mall that was close to my grandmother's house, and she used to take me there as a kid. It was
Okay.
very big, very, it was known as like the expensive mall back in the day of the 90s, where if you had money, that's where you go. It's where my grandmother
Right.
would get like all of her nice outfits, and she would like take me there for a treat. And I remember they used to have like a big carousel there that I would go on.
Mhm.
I
Nice.
don't believe there was an actual tree in it though. I think that was added.
Yeah, that feels very much like something that you would add, obviously specifically for the story.
I
But
really feel like I would remember if there
yeah,
was a tree in the middle of the food court there.
But would it have surprised you?
No, because they did stuff like that all the time. But again, I would have known that mall as the mall with the giant tree in it.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to like the mall with the carousel.
Yeah, that mall was the mall. It had a giant carousel. So I was
Right.
like, that's that mall. That's how I associated things. The Stranger Things mall was the mall with the cool fountains because they had these like little fish fountains that would like spit water at you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how a child associates. There were so many malls around me in the 90s. So that's how I differentiate between them.
Oh, 100%. There are a couple of malls here in Portland that I obviously grew up around. Not ones that were super close to me. These were on the other side of the Willamette. But there is Lloyd Center, which is the skating rink mall, because there's an ice rink in it.
Oh, nice.
And there was Jansen Beach, which is the carousel mall.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had this the Jansen Beach Carousel is kind of a Portland landmark, like historical thing. The malls that we had much closer to us, they had much less cooler things in it, but there's the movie theater mall, and there's a mall that doesn't exist anymore in Tannisbourne, which is very near where I live now.
Sadly for us, that is the Stranger Things mall.
Yeah,
It no longer exists.
I remember the Tannisbourne Mall as being the one that even in like the 80s, it felt retro in terms of like the outer design of it. And the only things I remember it at this point are I saw Project X, which is the 1986 movie with Matthew Broderick about chimpanzees being trained for fighter pilot test things. That sounds like a really silly movie, but it's actually a very serious thriller. I saw that there, and that was where my first tabletop role playing game store was.
Huh.
I only went to that store maybe twice because I'm talking about like I was 10, 11, and we were still in the satanic panic era,
Mm.
and my parents were not cool with that. So most of my D&D playing was either with friends at school when we were supposed to be, or after school actually probably, or with my speech therapist,
Huh.
because that was actually my introduction to Dungeons and Dragons. As a side note, was my speech therapist used it to help me because I used to my tongue. God, this is a wide tangent, but
On this show, no.
yeah. So when I was young, I had the thing where my tongue was not fully disconnected from the bottom of my mouth. They had to clip it.
Oh, I've heard of this condition. Yeah.
And so my S's and my L's and my R's were not S's, L's, and R's. So let's put it that way. And so my speech therapist, who was part of the worked at the grade school that I was going to at that time in first grade, taught me Dungeons and Dragons because he realized I had a big imagination and a love of fantasy. Every time I mispronounced something, the character lost a hit point.
Aw.
Yeah,
That's a good way to do it, though.
it is. But also, I look at that and go, this was like 1986. Again, the height of the satanic panic era, and a grade school teacher employee was teaching the 10-year-old kid to play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm
Mm.
amazed that he got away with it.
So, does that, I guess, in retrospect, explain how you go through so many characters in games?
Yes.
Well,
Like, you blame your dice rolling luck. I think it's subliminal.
So every time they mispronounce something, you lose the hit
every
point.
time I mispronounce something, I gotta take a health level away from a character.
Yep.
No, I mean I will say I lost one or two characters during those early games, but that's old school D&D. Period.
Yeah, where elf was a class.
Exactly. Although I think we eventually made it to advanced, but no, we were fully playing the red box D&D. But like 5th edition keeps characters alive under any condition. It is hard to kill a character in 5th edition
Ha!
unless you're playing Curse of Strahd and running that first encounter. But no, early editions of D&D, it didn't give a fuck. It would kill you right off the bat. There were no death saves. If you are a wizard, you better hold on and pray because you've got 4 hit points and a goblin can kill you.
Yeah, but I played a 5th ed wizard and I had 3. Again, that's probably because I'm weird.
Yeah, also, you make Constitution your dump stat.
Because it's fun. Live fast, die young as a hero very shortly.
Constitution as a dump stat is fun. I will always be a fan of Wisdom as a dump stat because it gives you a reason to make bad decisions because you don't think things through.
I just dump stats. Who needs them?
Well, also, yes, you get excited if you don't have a stat above a 10.
It's fun.
Anyways, we're talking about the Fear Street franchise.
Sorry, one little thing I just wanted to add to your thing from earlier, which has nothing to do with Fear Street. When you
Go for it.
mentioned your speech thing, I also went through speech stuff, though I did not learn D&D doing that. So your therapist was cooler than mine. But
Yes, no.
I was actually legally deaf until I was 3.
Oh, wow.
So that's why my hearing is never the best still. But
Right.
yeah, so I also went through that. I just didn't go through it as fun as you did.
You didn't go through it in as fun of a way. Yeah,
Yes.
no, legit. No, again, it's the weirdest, like, unicorn of a situation that I often wonder, like, did he eventually get busted for that or anything? Because how?
So I never went to speech therapy, though I did have a stutter that I have kind of mostly gotten rid of. It still
Mm-hmm.
comes up from time to time. So I didn't get any help for that because they're just like, oh, you're probably fine. Get over it.
Right.
But I did get incentivized to recite all the books of the Bible in order.
How did you get in? Nope, nope.
You know this way lies madness.
I was gonna say, I feel like I want to ask questions about that, but I'm not sure I want to know the answers.
We should probably move on to Fear Street.
Yeah. So we're gonna move from 1980s teaching kids D&D in public education to 1994. Actually, before we get into that, really quick, a content warning for these films. For 1994, we have a lot of gore, also in 1978, but a lot of gore. There is some discussion of drug addiction and some overdosing that happens and some homophobia. I personally don't think it's too bad considering that it's from 1994, but there is some of that in play, and I believe there are some slurs mentioned. And then for 1978, a little bit more specific. Again, lots and lots of gore, spiders and snakes. There is some self harm discussion in this film. There are some tight spaces for the claustrophobics.
Yo.
Yep. And there is a surprising amount of violence inflicted upon children, although it is all generally off screen. I think we only see the older teens get it explicitly on screen in 78. So yeah, Fear Street Part 1, 1994. So with this film, we open up in 1994, big surprise, in the town of Shadyside, Ohio, as a girl named Heather is murdered by her friend Ryan Torres wearing a mask at Shadyside Mall as part of a massacre before he's shot dead by police sheriff Nick Good. Shadyside is known as the murder capital of the US, while Sunnyvale is one of the wealthiest, safest towns. Local Shadysiders blame the legend of Sarah Fear, a woman who was executed for witchcraft in 1666. Meanwhile, we've got a teen named Dina who is dealing with a breakup from her girlfriend Sam, who moved to Sunnyvale. Dina takes care of her brother, computer nerd and amateur Shadyside historian Josh, while her friends Simon and Kate sell drugs in the hopes that they can one day escape the town. During a vigil for the Skull Mask victims, a fight between Sunnyvale and Shadyside kids starts, and that leads to a bus ride home, during which Sam's new boyfriend Peter tailgates the bus because he's an asshole. Dina ends up nearly throwing a cooler on the car, but it falls out and causes Peter's car to crash anyway. Sam is hurt and gets a vision of the witch after she bleeds on the ground before going to the hospital. Unfortunately for them, Ryan is resurrected and continues killing his skull mask, including killing Peter and a nurse at the hospital. Our heroes escape and tell the police to absolutely no effect, while another dead killer from 1965, Ruby Lane, attacks Simon. They come to realize that the crash woke up Sarah Fear, and the killers are after Sam, chasing the others only because her blood was on their clothing. After a trap to burn the Shadyside killers gives us fire, but the killers return, they try to contact the survivor from the 1978 Camp Nightwing massacre named C. Berman, who they realize died briefly during her experience. They decide to try and kill Sam with drugs and then revive her to break the curse. But the killers attack and Kate is put through a bread slicer head first, while Simon takes a knack to the head from the Nightwing killer. Dina ends up drowning a willing Sam and revives her, after which the killers disappear and the police blame Simon and Kate for the murders. Dina and Sam reconcile, but later that night, C. Berman calls and says it isn't over. Dina turns around and gets stabbed by a possessed Sam, but Josh helps subdue her. As the first film closes, Dina vows to find a way to free Sam from the curse. And that's what happens in 1994. So let's start this off by talking about this is the first film of a trilogy, and a trilogy that was not like, okay, we made one, it was successful. Now let's come up with the other two films. Like this was all conceived as a three-part story, filmed back to back, as she said. So that makes it a little bit different from your normal film. And so my question is, how do we feel about how this story plays out specifically as an introduction to the trilogy while still being, its own movie? Holly, how does that work for you?
Well, first of all, I wish more things were done like this because I love the airing them a week apart. You get like a little preview at the end of each one for what's coming,
Yep.
and they just all flow into each other, and really they all happen in the course of just I think 2 or 3 nights. But
Yeah.
you've also got all the flashbacks. It's very well done. I wish there was more stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely agreed.
as its own movie, I thought it was great. I thought it stood very firmly on its own legs.
Mhm. Elle, how do you think this manages that balance? Because it has a lot to do in both respects. Does that work for you for the most part? Is there anything that hangs up on it?
It feels like it's setting up for a sequel, but not necessarily a trilogy. So it feels like, oh, yep, we have enough story for one more film. And it's like, yep, that works. Then finding out it's to be stretched into a trilogy initially had me a bit worried because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how much have you got left to work with? But then I guess in the third one, that's I guess why, because it comes a little bit out of nowhere.
Right.
It's like, yep, here's some bonus story for you. Enjoy.
Yep. No, 100%.
So I don't think it works as a trilogy, but it in retrospect works. You know what I mean?
I think I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like, this could have easily just been two. You're absolutely right there. I think, look, 1994 has a lot of it has a lot of heavy lifting to do because I think this is a mythology heavy franchise. And yeah, 1978 and 1666 I think have plenty of exploration to do in terms of that series lore, but this movie has to do a lot. It has to establish the dynamic between the two towns. That does get expanded in 78 particular, but it has to give us the basics of Sarah Fear. It has to introduce a number of the shady side killers, but particularly focus on Skull Mask and arguably Ruby Lane. Between all that, it also has to build the relationships between our 1994 characters, which is going to be important because even if a majority of them don't make it, the ones that do, we need to understand those characters. And actually, I would argue, even the ones who don't make it out of this film alive, we need to understand those dynamics because, spoiler alert, they play out in a really interesting way in 1666 in the flashback stuff. So that I think that gives this film a real risk. Like this could be sort of what Iron Man 2 is for the MCU in terms of like Iron Man 2 is so busy setting up all the Avengers stuff that it kind of loses itself as a story. I think it's still an okay MCU film,
Hmm.
but when you think about Iron Man 2, the story is not the thing that most people will think about first. Most people will think about how it's setting up all the Avenger Initiative stuff. This film easily could have done that because it's trying to set up all of this stuff. But I think fortunately, Janiak and Graziade are really able to strike that balance well. We get some real exposition heavy moments, no doubt, but because of the way it's written, I think that the exposition dump scenes don't make the movie grind to a halt the way that less effective exposition dumps do. Like there are times when they need to stop the movie altogether, not this movie, but other ones, so that they can dump all of this lore on us, or the details behind the heist and the heist scene, or the villain's motivation, and it just kills the momentum. I don't think that happens here. So yeah, I think it is generally pretty successful at what it's trying to set up, and then the movie itself that it's creating. Speaking of the movie that it's creating, we have sort of a core cast of characters.
Our coterie, if you will.
Our coterie, yeah, that's a good way to put it. 1994 really focuses on these five characters, so it's important that we like them. Elle, do we like these characters, and what do we think about them in general?
I didn't initially like Dina
Mm-hmm.
until Sam gets revealed. I know that's weird, but it's like, oh, you're coming at it from this queer perspective. Okay, I can now everything like the cogs are turning in my head and everything's like clicking into place like certain demonic puzzles.
That is not weird at all because I think it makes a lot of sense.
I just know that there would be people who would latch onto it. It's like, aha, you're only in it for that. I'm like, no. I mean, not even normally, but just also specifically no. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's like, I know this could be weird because I know some people would react. Um,
Fair.
Kate and Simon are definitive side characters in my mind. Maybe I'm just too conditioned to other things where it's like, oh, well, you have your main cast, you have the immediate circle around them, and then you have further and further away from relevancy.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they're in that third circle.
For sure.
Like even like Josh is second tier.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I found Josh to be a little bit annoying as the nerdy younger brother who is also suddenly the expert. And I don't know if that trope has been around too much, but it's just like it didn't really sit well.
Yeah. It's like you're reading the notes that I put down in my own little side document about these.
Like it's not quite anywhere near the level of you're a nerd, you must like the Big Bang Theory.
Right.
But it's not incorrect along those lines.
No, I agree with you. I think I like these characters as a whole. I really, really like them actually. But I agree with you. I think Josh suffers from what I call kid sibling syndrome. He is the irresponsible kid who is he's gonna become endangered at some point, but he's also super precocious. This is I almost said this is not a character that exists in real life, and then I remembered, no, I was 10 years old. But it is very much a trope. I do think and this is going to be a running theme for all these characters. I do think Benjamin Flores Jr. pulls off that character really well, and his performance is really good, and that helps it.
Yeah, he is a very strong actor at making a character that I do not like but begrudgingly accept. It's
Mm,
like, yeah, okay, woo, go you, I guess. And
yep.
I want the other team to lose more than I want you to win.
That's yeah. Um Beyond him, yes, I know that Dina got some shit early on because she is not the most quote unquote likable character. She's brusque, she is bitter about her situation, she is confrontational. She is basically everything that the Hollywood playbook says that female presenting characters are not supposed to be. I also think she is very authentic to what a teenager, especially a queer teenager in her situation in the 1990s, would be. I can't really blame her based on now when we first see her, she immediately gives off, and there's the for lack of a better way to put it, she immediately gives off bitch. But it doesn't take that long before we understand kind of how and why that's the case. And it's authentic. It makes sense. Teenagers are over dramatic little shits. That's just how it is for a number of reasons, not the least of which is hormones. And I think that Kiana Madeira does a really good job of balancing that confrontational, quote unquote, unlikable aspect with being a really sympathetic character. I will admit, Kate is probably my favorite of these five because I'm always going to have a soft spot for that snarky, bitchy best friend kind of character. The Tatums and the other characters are around that sort of mindset. I think that she is a really fun character that provides a nice balance to someone like Dina and Sam. And that's good because it plays well into the climax, at which point I literally went the first time, "Oh, shit, I know. Oh, God, no. Okay, yep, that happened." And I think Simon and Sam are the characters I probably vibed with the least. I think they're fine. I think they make sense within the context of the film. I think the actors are fine. But Simon just kind of fades in the background to me because he is the somewhat less cool Kate. And I don't know. I think we're supposed to be conflicted over Sam because Dina is our eyes of the audience character. She is the character that we're supposed to be sympathetic for, and these two characters are fighting at first. But she feels harder for me to like. And maybe there's some of that. She is less fiery. The character makes sense with the choices that they make, and I think I get there at the end with both of them. They just resonate with me a little bit less than Dina and Kate. Holly, how about you? Which of these characters stand out to you? Maybe a little, if any of them do a little less, and just overall, how do you like them?
I'm gonna argue. I loved Dina from the second I saw her.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how she was. I like that she's different. She's the things you're not supposed to like.
Right.
And I mean, when Sam appeared, I also found her even more interesting at that point
Mm-hmm.
because it's not your typical, oh, woe is me, football player dump me, which they make you think at the beginning.
Yep. The name Sam is a smart one.
Oh, yes. Well, and the way they do it when she's sitting there and then you
Yep.
don't see Sam at first and she looks up and says Sam and then they reveal who it is. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's done well. So yeah, Kate is probably my favorite beyond Dina of that
Right.
group. She also does have like the best death in my opinion.
Oh, by far.
Yeah, it's very good.
It was a work of
Um
art.
It really it
I
really is. Like we'll get into that later, but like holy shit. This movie does not play.
yes. Josh and Simon are a little more forgettable.
Yeah.
they're there. Sam isn't given a ton of personality, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Other than she's Dina's girlfriend or ex, it's complicated.
Right.
She's one of those characters that's sort of there, and you're supposed to follow and like them, but they don't give you much.
Mm-hmm. She is I haven't heard these actors talk about taking on these roles, but she comes off to me very much as you audition for Dina and then they want you for Sam and you're like, I mean, it's a job, obviously, but okay, fine, sure.
Yes. I don't hate any of the characters.
Right.
They're sort of. Simon is forgettable, in my opinion.
Mm,
He's there. Josh, you definitely know he's there more because he's Dina's little brother. He's got the thing for Kate. He's fine.
yep.
But also, it's not a ton of time to flesh out some of the characters.
No.
Like Simon, who dies in the first movie. You don't have a ton of time to flesh that out.
Yep.
And Sam is possessed for most of the series.
No, for sure. I think Simon is arguably the character you would see, the character of these five that you would be most likely to see in a standard teen slasher or even teen like sex comedy film.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is the stoner teenage boy so obsessed with sex kind of character. Whereas I think the other characters are all a little bit more subversive in a way, in terms of queer characters, in terms of the cheerleader who deals drugs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then Josh, I think it stands out a little bit more than Sam just because he's very tropey in terms of, like we said, precocious little brother character, but he's also the most clearly connected to the mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So he's able to stand out a little bit from that. Simon, who again, Fred Heidecker, I think is how his last name is pronounced, does a really good job with the character, but there's only so much there on the page beyond character that we've seen before.
Right.
So, one of the things that I find interesting about this movie is we get a lot of 1980s throwback horror at this point, to the point that I think it's a little exhausting at now. We've had things like The Stranger Things, It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, frankly, My Best Friend's Exorcism, Satanic Panic, Maxine, Final Girls. That is such a thing at this point. I was trying to think about it. I don't know that I can think of another 1990s throwback horror film. There might be one out there, but I couldn't really think about it. And that makes this a little bit interesting to me. I'm curious, how do the 90s vibes work for you? Holly, how does that stuff play out, both in terms of like making it distinctive on its own and just how much do you feel the 90s in this?
Well, I can say, especially going to that mall as a kid and everything, like right away, it's sort of like a little time machine, like the opening scene, because I'm like, that is, and as I said, this mall in real life, it would be more Sunnyvale than
Right.
Shadyside, but that was like the mall that Stranger Things was filmed in was a lot like that mall at the beginning of 1994. And yeah, it was like a little time machine. You know, the bookstore, because I'm like, I know that bookstore. I used to go to that bookstore all the time.
Yep.
I know this place. I know the food court. It's almost like coming home in a
Yeah, I
way.
was gonna say that it's almost literally a 90s time capsule for you.
Yeah, it's
Like, would they have had the same names, or did they change them for the movie?
Yeah, was because I think it's a Barnes and Noble in the movie, right?
No, it
To
is
be
a
Dalton.
Wald or B. Dalton. I'm sorry. I'm used to Walden books. Yeah, I think it's B. Dalton. Yes.
To be fair, B. Dalton, I think Barnes and Noble's bought B. Dalton, which B. Dalton that's a whole 90s vibe right there.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because again, that is the bookstore I was in at the mall all the time.
Right.
Yeah, B. Dalton or Walden Books.
Yes.
And yeah, because every mall had one of those, and that was my go-to even as a little kid because I read like crazy all the time.
Mhm. For sure. Elle, how about you? How does the 90s stuff work for you? Is the 90s feel the same for just in general the same for you as it might be for us? I don't know how that translates.
Funnily enough, yeah, that was going to be my commentary on it. It's like I can see that it has 90s vibes because of other things that have come out of the US for this time, but it is not my 90s.
That is entirely fair.
Because it's like at the very least, it's like, oh, you get all your Christmas sweaters, and high school seems so weird over there. It's
Oh,
like
it is.
a
It is.
lot of this stuff is just so alien to me.
Mhm.
And I mean, we'll talk about it in the next one as well. We keep setting up these sizzle plates, but yeah, it's like it's so much of it is just so bizarre to see. So even the 90s that I can connect with, it's so far removed. It might as well again have been on a different planet.
Yeah. No, that's actually really fair.
Because it's like you guys get to go to school in normal clothes. You have you have band practice. Your kids get supported in schools. You have lockers and like all these big things. It's like this is so weird.
I mean, I don't know how much supported we get in school, depending on the school, but
I didn't, but
Yeah, but you have like entire schools set up because they're a good football team. For example,
okay.
I remember having to basically sacrifice half of my curriculum 2 years in a row to get two individual people into a university on a sports scholarship. Like literally, we had to sell off the computer lab because they needed the money in order to pay for their way to university. The poor darlings.
Huh. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Like the first one, yeah, potential Olympic level track and field star, like potential. Uh, got into university 2 months in, got drunk into a car crash, broke both her legs, and then got pregnant and dropped out. So that was a great use of a scholarship. The
wow.
other one, I will actually shout out because he did go on to be successful. Fair enough. Tatafu Palota now of the Wallabies rugby team, like international level talent. Yeah, cool. I didn't get to do any extracurricular activities outside of maths classes because the school couldn't afford it to send him to university. But good on you, you could kick a ball. So just seeing how much, like, even if it is just the football team or whatever, how much support kids get.
Yeah.
Because even here, where we love our sport, they don't get that much.
That is entirely fair. Yeah. Wow. So for me, this is an interesting one because honestly, outside of something that we'll get into next, I tend to forget that this is a 1990s movie sometimes. And maybe that's because the 90s are that quote unquote normal era for me. But unless it's like paying homage to Scream in the opening scene, or Josh is on AOL Instant Messenger, I don't really tend to feel the 1990s stuff. And I'm not complaining because a lot of times when studios are trying to evoke a specific era, they don't necessarily do it well. I'm not talking about authenticity, although that is also a thing. Hello, Time Cut. Yeah,
Don't get me started.
yeah. I enjoy a lot of the 1980s set throwback stuff that we've had over the last, what, 6, 7 years. But stuff like Totally Killer and My Best Friend's Exorcism, every time they're like, hey, 80s reference. Did you see this 80s reference? Hey, look, shoulder pads, Reagan, where's the beef? Leg warmers. it takes me out because it's going so over the top with it. Whereas here, it's not obtrusive, right? It's more baked into this setting. And I really appreciate that part of it. There's stuff that feels 1990s to me only because in the 1990s, I was in high school. So it feels authentic to me in that way, but not in the hey, here's a shoehorn Kurt Cobain reference because this movie takes place in 1994 and guess who died in 1994 kind of thing. Like the movie's smart enough not to have to really jackhammer that home. And instead it just more kind of lives in the setting, which I like.
They like it when you point at the sign.
Yeah. I mean, I like it when they point at the sign. The sign doesn't necessarily have to be in neon lights with fireworks going off behind it every time, unless it's the Royal Rumble. We're okay with it at that point. The other aspect, again, that I get into is so much of this movie is set to needle drops. And needle drops, for those who are not familiar, this is a term to reference the songs that we know from outside of the film that are used as mood setters and tone setters within the movie. There are so many needle drops in this movie. My letterbox review of the rewatch literally calls it the most needle droppy slasher to have ever needle dropped. Ollie, how do these work for you? Is it too much? Is it the right amount? Are there any particular songs that are great or ones that you don't vibe with?
So I'm going to argue with you on that.
Okay.
I don't think it's that bad in this movie. I kind of want to put a pin in this and talk about it in the next movie
Okay.
because it is so on the nose in 1978. There are some in 94, but I enjoyed all the music. It's
Mm-hmm.
all time, and I did check on all the songs, and they are all songs that would have been out at this time.
Actually, that's not true.
It's not true?
There's at least two. I don't remember what the other one is, but Only Happy When It Rains by Garbage was released in 1995.
Okay.
I know that one very specifically because that was one of
Okay.
my favorite songs of the 90s. But yes, they
They
generally do work.
generally, unlike other movies, time cut.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, don't guide it whole notepad of stuff on that one.
See, now we're gonna have to
I
cover it at some point.
I'm gonna have diagrams, and I'm gonna like rewatch it and pull out a notepad and start taking
Uh-huh.
notes, and you will get to hear me rant for a
Look,
really long time about that movie.
at some point we are going to have to cover a movie that we all hate.
No, I kind of want to do it now. No,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Don't worry, I've put a few on the list that I'm pretty sure we'll get there.
But yeah, some of it I think towards the end may of this movie may have been a little on the nose, but again, it didn't bother me.
No.
I will talk about this more for the next movie.
Fair. And I want to be clear. I like the needle drops. I think that they are the most extra thing ever. There is a point early on, we are like 10 minutes into the movie, where it literally goes 3 needle drops back to back in one sequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's when Dina and Josh are walking into Shady State High, and it goes Bush's Machine Head, Sophie B. Hawkins' Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover, and Portishead's Sour Time. There is no dialogue. It cuts straight from one to the other. And at that point, I was like, holy shit. But while it's a little bit much, and while it might be my child of the 90s nostalgia being so musically centered, I enjoyed every single one of them in this film. I think it helps that they are all used very effectively. Like that sequence that I mentioned, those are all really well set. Like it is all very effective needle drops, I think. There isn't one that they just cram in there. Like a lesser film I could see saying, hey, Smells Like Teen Spirit was a very popular song in the 90s. We should
Mm-hmm.
find a way to put that in there. There's nothing that feels like that with these.
maybe you guys, but for me, the 90s was the Nutbush.
I feel like I should know what that is.
Tina Turner, Nutbush City Limits.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
For whatever reason, that song did massive numbers in Australia, and we invented our own line dance
Amazing.
to the point that basically every day going to school, they started off with doing the Nutbush.
Wow.
Everyone form up. We're going to play Nutbush City Limits, do the dance, and now go to school.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. You don't get parachute day, but you get the nut bush.
Yeah.
Not pushed it.
Huh. Yeah, no, that fair enough, I guess.
Look, we have a summertime Christmas. Everything is screwed up down here.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But yeah, I guess just for me, these feel authentic. Like I guarantee you at some point I was in my room angrily either writing a note or at least in my fields while Only Happy When It Rains was playing. El, how does obviously these songs, they might not have the zeitgeist 90ness of Nutbush City Limits for you, but how do the needle drops work overall for you?
I feel like they did too many of them.
Okay.
Like, because you get such a short snippet of it before it's time for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, so I was looking this up. The first part, Fear Street, 1994, is an hour 47.
Right.
They do 17 songs.
Yep.
The
That's a
official
lot.
soundtrack to Good Morning Vietnam, which is a film that runs for 2 hours, has 19 songs, one of which is a monologue by Robin Williams in character.
Yep. And that is legitimately about a radio DJ.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It feels like it is too much.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'd say. Like, it is extra. It is the most extra thing that they could have done. I agree with you on that.
And yeah, again, going back to like the 90s vibes, my 90s musical tastes were between the 50s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find anything from the 90s until maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, fair. That's
That's not just because we get things late here in Australia, because we do.
okay.
It takes a couple of years for a movie to come out
Right.
sometimes. But also, you never underestimate the power of parental guidance.
Uh-huh. And that's, I think, why the 90s is such a decade that I connect to in terms of the music almost more than I do films. Because what you just described was me in the 80s. The first cassette I ever owned, let's date myself there, was Weird Al Yankovic in 3D, which is a great Weird Al album, but was indicative of, as great of an artist as Weird Al is, how far off the pulse that I was.
Mm-hmm.
In an era when MTV was at its height, I should also say, I watched MTV. I saw all those videos. I liked all those videos. There's a couple of those that are formative to me. But I wasn't listening to popular music outside of what I might have seen on MTV because my parents controlled the cassette player in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And we were listening to the 60s and 70s stuff, or if it was the 80s, it was, I'm going to try to say this in the nicest way I can, easy listening from Christopher Cross and people like that. And it wasn't until I remember the year specifically. Picture it. Beaverton, Oregon, 1992. I joined BMG Record Club for the first time, CD Club, and got a number of albums, CDs sent to me, which was the first in a long series of scamming BMG and Columbia House because I figured out how to make that work just like everybody else did. I'm pretty sure I got somewhere around the vicinity of 100 and some CDs for the price of whatever the amount was divided by 12, because there's always 12 for the price of one things. I got like it was a Paul Abdul album. There was a Richard Marx album. There was Red Hot Chili Peppers Blood Sugar Sex Magic. I remember that one specifically. And a couple others, and that was when I started listening to popular music. So by the time 94, 95 come around, I'm either in my senior year in high school or going off to college, I was in my formative era of, oh, this is what popular music is like. So this stuff really hits for me as kind of formative to my tastes.
I think I can beat you on the music bragging, sort of.
Okay.
The first album I ever bought was Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells, because it is the theme
The
song to The
Exorcist
Exorcist.
song?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was on vinyl, before vinyl was cool. It's like, no, this you get it on a record.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Walkman in 1990. My first cassette that I owned was Fallen by Evanescence,
Okay. Wait, in
which
1990?
that's when I had the Walkman. I didn't say I had any cassettes for it.
Oh, okay, that's fair enough.
But
I was
this
gonna
is
say,
well into the time where CDs are the considerate good choice.
right.
I bought it on cassette.
Yeah.
So I just had borrowing out of my dad's collection. So that's what I mean. It's like going to school with, some chapters of Pink Floyd going through.
See, that I was disadvantaged even in that. My parents had records on vinyl and had some cassettes. And like I said, most of the cassettes were stuff like Christopher Cross, or occasionally they might pick up something a little trendier like Men at Work or something like that. And for the records, I remember there was one album that I would look at today and I would actually listen to. It was one of the 4 Led Zeppelin numbered albums. I think it was 2.
Hmm.
Everything else was like, and these aren't bad artists, but certainly not stuff I'm interested in. There was a lot of like the Slim Pickens and like 70s country stuff that was just not my thing. And then the stuff that I really remember, they had about 5 or 6 Bill Cosby albums. Yep, we're just gonna leave that right there because, oh boy,
I've been quiet because I was afraid to share my first cassette that I ever owned.
Oh, let's go.
oh, let's go,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. It was Spice Girls.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
It was
I thought it was gonna
whatever
be
the
weird.
original Spice Girls one. No, I mean I was a girl
Spice
in the
World?
90s. I think it was Spice World. The like the first one that came out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I played
was
the video
obsessed.
game of that.
Dude, that is, I will stand by that album.
I still have all the Spice Girl Barbies. I was obsessed.
Fair. Now, to be clear, at that time, I would not have stood by that
Right.
album. I would have been, Spice Girls, God.
You would have made me feel awful.
I wouldn't know because I would not have had the confidence to make anybody feel awful about their choices, because that would require that I have some confidence in myself as a person, and that wasn't happening. But I would have silently judged. Now, I say this, I would have silently judged, well, because again, at this point, I was down in Ashland at Southern Oregon State. Well, at late night, would be watching MTV or VH1 and grooving along, probably without even realizing it, to Two Become One.
Still love that song. I mean, I still do.
It's a great song.
I would have backed you up on it, having no idea what you were talking about.
Meanwhile, my friends and I would like completely dress up like full outfits, not for Halloween or anything, just because it was a Saturday.
Right,
And
because it's Saturday.
The Spice Girl outfits, like belting out "Spice Up Your Life," dancing around the living room. Yeah, we each
Yep.
had our Spice Girl.
No, that's fine. I thought you were going to say, because I just said the Cosby thing, I thought you were going to say, but my first cassette was like a Cosby thing.
No, I'm just like a little embarrassed, but you know, the girl preteen thing in 90s Spice Girls.
Yeah.
I can't remember which year it was, but I know I basically spent a whole year listening to the one cassette over and over, and it was the Baz and Pilko Christmas album, which is a very, very Australian reference for anyone there. They did Aussie versions of all the Christmas classics.
Oh, no.
And also a tragedy about a cyclone that destroyed one of our capital cities.
On the Christmas album, or is this a separate song?
Yeah, Christmas never came to Darwin. The cyclone came and blew the town away.
Well then.
Because it happened on Christmas Day. It's just like, yep, the town's gone. Whoops.
I having only a Christmas album to listen to, that's my personal version of hell. I love the holidays. I hate Christmas music.
It's like, yeah, We Three Kings of Bankstown Square.
Oh, so these are localized Christmas covers.
Yeah. What was it? Dashing through the bush and a rusty Holden ute. Dingo by my side. Beer is in the boot.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. It's the whole album, and God, it's in my head at all times.
That is peak cringe.
So yeah, there's a bit much music for my tastes.
Yes, there's a bit much, and that's fair. Like I said, it is very extra, but I'm with every single one. But I know that is not an uncommon opinion that 94 overdoes it a bit. Speaking about potentially overdoing it, how do we feel about the horror content in this? Spoiler alert, I don't think they overdo it. I think they do it just enough. This is a slasher, and supernatural slashers, obviously, they're a thing. Nightmare on Elm Street, the Friday the 13th ones past 4, basically, or 6, actually. But this is an interesting take on the supernatural aspects of the slasher, and obviously, the violence is. This is a teen horror film that earns its R rating and then some, I would say. Holly, how do you like the gore in this?
Excessive gore doesn't bother me. I don't know if I would say it's super excessive in this one.
I think.
I think it's more in the second one on the gore.
Oh, the second one. Yeah, we will get to the
Yeah.
second one
Oh
because
yeah.
the
Yeah.
second one, holy shit, that climax. But
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think back to all the gore. I think it's an average. I mean, that said, like Kate's death. Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's also awful because I love Kate, but
right.
it's good. And that whole moment of like Josh seeing the aftermath of that's kind of heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's so well done. Such an original concept, other than just being like decapitated or
Right.
stabbed or anything like that. Yeah. I really using your surroundings in the setting that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. But yeah, I don't know. I felt there could have been more gore, but maybe I'm just a horrible person that's never gotten hugged in her life.
I mean, I think it takes a while for this film, obviously beyond the first scene. And the first scene, I don't think is too over the top. And it also, the first scene can kind of get away with it because it is so obviously a Scream opening scene homage, right down to the moment where Heather gets it, which is shot the exact same way as the way Casey Becker gets it in the first Scream. It's easier to be like, okay, well, that's homaging that. That's why that happened the way it did. I think it takes long enough for this film to get to the gore, and it establishes some of the teen element stuff that I was kind of vibing with it as being like, okay, this is a little bit more of a teen friendly stuff. And then like the kills in the hospital are brutal, but I guess you're right. I don't think are necessarily that over the top.
Mm-hmm.
It is mostly when we get to the big set piece at the end.
Yes. I think also I'm just comparing it so much to the second one.
Yes.
That yeah, because there is so much gore and everything in that.
That's fair. That is fair.
I felt like this one was just more of a lead up to that.
Mm-hmm. How about just the general supernatural stuff? How does that stuff work for you?
Oh, that works great. I think the curse and everything, and I can't believe I didn't notice this originally. It's such an obvious thing, but Shawnee had brought it up when we were watching it that everyone that's like near the witch's bones, their nose starts bleeding.
Yep, because Witch wants to wake up, and she needs blood for it.
Blood will fall when she comes near.
Yeah.
I notice it's not everyone though, because it's specifically Dina. It's not Kate and Simon, and then the I don't mean to like skip ahead, but the very end of the second one when Josh is with her and she's going out to the woods, he's like, your nose is bleeding, and his isn't. But
Right.
they're both they're both like the equal distance from the bones. So
Yeah. It's basically it's Dina and Sam. Because
yeah,
Sam also definitely nosebleeds.
but it's someone else in the second movie too.
I think
It
it
might be
might be
Cindy.
Ziggy.
See you.
Yeah.
Ziggy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I'm a little fuzzy on the rules. It works. It does provide you that kind of oh shit warning sequence, especially when it happens in the second one, because we've already kind of seen it in the first. But yeah, Elle, how about you? How does the general horror content in 1994 stack up for you?
I am so surprised at how much gore there is. If only because I wouldn't have thought they would have had anything left in their budget after the music. But no, it is very well done.
hmm
Even if it does, I guess for the sake of setting up set pieces to pay out later in the series, that it
Right.
actually holds back on some in a weird spot.
Yes.
The possession thing felt weird because it didn't. It's weird. There wasn't any noticeable signs. Like I'm used to seeing other examples where like the skin turns slightly grey, or
Right.
thinking of The Exorcist. It's like, yeah, here's the pea soup and my head's on backwards.
Or the different voice,
Yeah.
or yeah, for
Or
sure.
even like the same voice but slightly echoey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do have a very stickler of an issue with one of the killers, specifically Ruby Lane,
Okay.
because for someone who is an aspiring singer, she cannot carry a tune.
But I think that's intentional too.
Yeah, but she's so far off key. It hurts every time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I agree. She definitely is not the best singer, but I think that is playing in on purpose.
Hmm.
I believe this is my read of this character is that look, everybody in Shady Side is desperate to get out of it, right? Pretty much everybody, at least. Some people
Hmm.
are like, fuck it, I'm doomed to be here forever. But generally, people are trying to get out of Shady Side. I think that there are characters that either because they're doomed or because they're so desperate they're going to latch on to one thing that they love and try and follow it out, whether it's going to get them out or not. And I think that's sort of I'm interpreting here because we don't have a lot with Ruby,
Hmm.
but that was kind of how I read that character on it. But I do agree with you. Ruby is not a great singer.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to come out here and claim that I have perfect pitch,
Right.
because I mean, hell, you heard me singing not too long ago, but I can always hear when there's a sour note. Like
Mm-hmm.
my hearing of music is is pretty keen. I can't like perform it well, but I can understand it. And so anytime there's the slight off note, it always gets me.
Mm-hmm.
Like different versions of Green Sleeves. If you have the wrong ice cream truck, your music is going to be off. It is a half note and it always pisses me off.
Yeah, I think the gore, particularly in that last set piece, is very well done. I hate and love that the character that I immediately latch onto and like this is the character that I'm following gets the worst death, but I think it's most effective in that way. Because yeah, Kate's death is the first time I saw it, I literally did a jaw drop and the gasp cover my mouth kind of thing. But it's just really well done. And I agree. I think the possession stuff is fine. I don't think it's any of the standout supernatural content, but I don't think it's bad. I've seen bad possessions,
Hmm.
and this is serviceable and inobtrusive to the storyline. Like they're not trying to go over the top with it, which could have gone bad. They're just kids snap, and then some of them come back from the dead, and then the police cover that up.
As you do.
But I do like we get three, well, two, I would argue. I think Skull Mask is just fine, and perhaps that's because he's the new one at the time. But we get two instantly iconic looking killers in Nightwing Killer and Ruby Lane. And we get just enough of Ruby to be like, I want to know more about this character,
Mm,
and Nightwing is instantly recognizable. because let's not beat about around the bush about this. It's Jason Voorhees with the serial number filed off, and that's not a complaint.
Yeah, it's Jason before movie number 3.
Yeah, it's Friday the 13th Part 2 Jason
Mhm.
with the bag on his head.
And some of 3.
And some of 3, yes.
It is partway through 3 that he actually gets the hockey mask. Eat it, nerds. We do know that.
Yep. And I think that's fine because that immediately we have a point of reference for this character, and that will we don't need to know more, especially since he's about to become the focus once we move to the next film. Speaking of which, let's move to the next film, Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Elle, what's this one about?
Well, we continue where the first part left off, with Dina and Josh restraining Sam and meeting with the mysterious C. Berman. Reluctant to help at first, she eventually lets them in and begins to tell the story of the 1978 massacre at Camp Nightwing. July 19th, 1978. A young girl named Ziggy Berman is accused of theft, and in retaliation, a group of kids tie her up and start to torture her slightly before being interrupted by the camp counselor, Nick Good. Ziggy's older sister, Cindy, is cleaning the mess hall with her boyfriend, Tommy, when the nurse, Mary Lane, mother of the future killer, well, past killer in this point, Ruby Lane, attacks the counselors, saying that Tommy needs to die. She's knocked out and taken away by police. The kids from Sunnyvale at the camp believe that the Shadyside native is to be possessed by Sarah Fear the witch, like her daughter. Cindy and Tommy investigate the infirmary, finding a journal that dives deep into the legends before Cindy's former friend Alice and her boyfriend Arnie join in, initially seeking drugs, but then egging on the other couple to follow the map they discovered in their journal. Finding what is labelled as the witch's house, there are several exposed graves that have been dug by Nurse Lane, all of them empty. Underneath the house, they find a mystical carving that the diary labels as the witch's mark. Further inside, Alice finds and then shows Cindy a wall of stone carved with the names of every Shadyside killer, with Tommy's name added at the bottom. Now possessed, Tommy takes out an axe and kills Arnie before chasing the girls. A lucky cave-in separates them, though it means Cindy and Alice are trapped while Tommy is free to return to the camp, axe in hand. He begins murdering campers and other counselors. Cindy and Alice try to navigate the maze of tunnels, while Ziggy and Nick bond over shared interests and pranking the previous bullies as revenge. Alice encounters a pulsating mass of organ meat and flesh, and when touching it, drives her into a panic with visions of the killers and their victims before breaking her ankle. The two former friends reconcile as they make their way through the caves to a spot under the camp outhouses where they could climb to safety. Meanwhile, massacre in full swing, the remaining counselors try to gather the kids to leave in the camp bus until Ziggy remembers locking the bully Stella in the outhouse as part of her revenge prank. Accompanied by Counselor Greg, she goes to free her. Angry over the prank, the two girls struggle before Stella is knocked out. In the immediate silent aftermath, Ziggy hears Cindy and Alice faintly screaming for help from beneath the building. Gary and Ziggy try to lower a rope and bucket to lift them out, but they are interrupted by Tommy, who kills Greg and chases Ziggy. So all of a sudden, Cindy and Alice are trapped, leaving Cindy to go and find her sister while Alice is still injured and recovering. Ziggy reunites with Nick as the bus leaves, hiding from Tommy until Nick becomes injured in an attack, causing them to be separate once again. In the mess hall, Ziggy is attacked by Tommy, but Cindy saves her by strangling him with a burlap sack. Alice arrives, having found the witch's hand, buried under the moss underneath the outhouse. Ziggy accidentally bleeds on the hand, receiving the terrifying visions of Sarah Fear and triggering the curse, reviving the host of killers, including a reinvigorated Tommy, in the familiar visage of the Camp Nightwing killer. He manages to kill Alice before Cindy decapitates him in return. The two sisters run to the tree that the witch was hanged on, pursued by all the killers, only to find no body to match the hand with, but an engraved rock with the words, "The witch forever lives." Cindy realizes that the killers are after Ziggy and sacrifices herself to give her an opening, but it is in vain, as Ziggy is also caught and both are killed. The killers disappear and Nick Good arrives on the scene, reviving Ziggy with CPR. The story over, Dina and Josh realize that C. Berman is Ziggy, her real name being Christine. They reveal that they had found the body and that the hand should then still be under the tree where Cindy dropped it in 78. The tree sitting within the grounds of the mall, being built over the campgrounds. They go and retrieve the hand and find the body. Waldina puts the hand in with the wrapped bones already found. But with her nose bleeding, she gets a vision of the past, where she appears to replace Seraphia herself in the year of 1666 in the town of Union.
Yep. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, do you guys have any summer camp experience? Holly, did you have any summer camp days growing up?
There was a whole, so like, I wanted to go. My parents were very overprotective and were kind of afraid to send me. I'm an only child. It's a whole thing. I did go. I was part of a group called Campfire Kids, which I'm not sure if they're around anymore. It's sort of like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts combined,
Right.
where it's not gender specific and everybody can be a part of it and you go do stuff. And there was a camp that we went to. So my parents went with us because my mom was the troop leader.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, like, I didn't have the away from mom and dad camp experience, but I did go a couple of
Right.
times.
Got it. El, how about, I'm guessing that this might be what you were talking about in terms of not having a point of reference in 78?
Yeah, the closest experience I have with this is watching Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
I also had some random book that it's like, oh, here's your guide to surviving summer camp, like as a kind of kids' comedy type of thing.
Right.
It's like, oh, don't forget to leave your sister at home. Ha ha ha. But my brother went for some Duke of something medal, like a proper government sponsored camping adventure type thing that was the extraordinary length of 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
He but wanted to quit on the first day, and they wouldn't let him. And then he came home on the second day because he wanted to be on video games more than being given a medal.
Right.
But yeah, even that was like, oh, it's on the Hawkesbury River, which is like 2 minutes walk from basically one of the two CBDs that New South Wales is trying to establish in Penrith,
Mm-hmm.
which means nothing to you guys, I'm sure. But anyone from the Riff listening, put your teeth back in and finish cheering. Thank you.
Yeah, legit.
So yeah, any summer camp stuff I had is from pop culture. It's like
Is
Camp
from pop
Krusty.
culture. Yep.
Yeah, it's just nothing to me.
Fair enough. So this is fair to say I have more experience. From I want to say 7, 8, something like that. It was probably like 7. I started going to a church camp in the Washington County area. I don't know if it still exists. It's called Camp Tapawingo. And I went to that for, I want to say, like 3 years. I know the last time my older brother also went to it. I don't know if it's just that I grew out of it or this was a big factor, but the last time that I went, I ended up with a third-degree burn on my leg from a flaming marshmallow. So I was doing marshmallows around the fire. Kid kept his in the fire too long, blew on it, and it exploded. And the majority landed right on my right leg, halfway between hip and knee. And there was no. That was the night that the nurse was her off night. So they put burn cream on an exposed third degree burn, and no hair grows there still to this day.
Wow.
Yeah, that summer sucked after that.
See, that sounds cool. I only got those burns from a lamp melting on me.
It was certainly an experience. But after that, I was in Boy Scouts. And every year we went to a summer camp, scout camp, which was either a Camp Cooper, which we went to, but I don't have any really strong memories of it. Camp Merriweather, which was on the Oregon beach, And then there was Camp Baldwin, which is in the middle of Oregon, and that was the horse camp. And did that for many years. And then when I was 16 and 17, I actually worked at the scout camp at Baldwin. So suffice it to say, I have a decent amount of experience with summer camps. Some great, some pretty horrific. But yeah, so this, I definitely relate to a lot of the summer camp stuff, and it hits pretty well for me. This film it's basically a feature length flashback sequence, which can carry its own risks there. Holly, how does that work in terms of both being its own movie and standing on its own, but still contextualizing the story of the trilogy and fitting in with where the story is going at this point?
I think it works well, especially because in the third one you've got the flashback to the original settlers. So I think it helps set that up. And it also just works as, I mean, camp and horror, they work really well. And talking about, here is what happened to me back when I was a kid, I think it's the perfect setup. And it also flows very well from the last movie into this one, into this is why we are doing this. We are trying to solve the mystery and figure out how we can end this.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Elle, how about you? How does the flashback sequence or sorry, the movie aka the flashback sequence, does it seem superfluous to you at all? Does it work out? Does it balance those two kinds of things that it's trying to accomplish for you?
Yeah, I think it nailed it actually because it is its own movie, basically a success in itself, while
Hmm.
still tying into like the overarching story. I think what it does best is kind of what Marvel, like the MCU, is kind of going for, where they have the hooting and hollering moments, as a different podcast calls it. It is for you, for the people who notice the thing to stand up and go, "Ooh, I noticed that thing,"
Yep.
but without the clear, unrestrained nature of that. It's like these pieces are all fitting into place.
Right.
Like I mentioned in the synopsis, as soon as Tommy gets the bag on his head and comes back as the Camp Nightwing killer, it's like there he is. That's the boy.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I will admit I was a little bit concerned going into the movie the first time because look, I love 94, but I was kind of like, okay, this is just going to be like is this just going to be I was encouraged because if the first one's good, the odds are that the second one at least is going to gives me hope for the second one. It's like is this just going to be a Friday the 13th ripoff that will give us stuff that we could get in a 5-minute exposition scene? And I'll be honest, it does basically give us what could be provided in a 5-minute exposition scene, but I think it's better like this for a number of reasons. I think it adds context to certain characters. Nick Good, obviously, should point out, by the way, if you're listening on this and you haven't seen 1666 yet, you might want to go watch it first because there might be some spoilers involving certain characters. Certainly not one that I just mentioned.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. But you have been warned. If you want to keep listening, great. If not, you can pause this, go watch 1666. It's also really good. And then you can come back and then you can not be spoiled when we get to that particular thing. But it adds context to Nick Good, to Mary Lane, who, by the way, is a character that I love, shows up in every single film, even though she's not like a main core character. She's one of sort of the guiding lines through this franchise. It adds a ton of stuff for the Sarah Fear thing that I don't know that an exposition scene would do as effectively. And I think we need this film to, other than the fact that it's just a good movie, to really deepen how we understand the conflict between Shadyside and Sunnyvale. Because I think the first sets that up well. The second really deepens it in a way that adds significantly to this story. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys. I think it gives us a great killer. It's just a really solid story that I think stands on its own nicely. Nicely as an homage to Friday the 13th, which it could not be any more obvious about. The look of Jason, or sorry, the look of Tommy, that was a Freudian slip that tells you a lot about that character, all that kind of stuff. Al, I know you are a fan of Friday the 13th. Is it too much of an homage for you to the point that it approaches ripoff, or is it spinning off its own enough that it works?
Yeah, I think having like the multiple viewpoints, even if it's just two, uh,
Hmm.
does kind of steer it away from being just another copy of the same movie.
Right.
So there's enough in the bones of it that it's like, yes, this is this movie, but it's also its own creation.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like they mention in scientific fields that no one's ever discovering anything on their own, that we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And this feels like it is that statement personified.
Right.
This is like the culmination of what horror film has led to before this. Not in terms of pure excellence, obviously. I'm just saying in terms of the tropes and the story beats and the theming and just the structure of it.
Hmm.
There's enough there that the cynical people could go, it's just a ripoff, but other people could look at that exact same thing and go, it's entirely its own thing.
Right.
And that fascinates me that you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Holly, I have you seen Friday the 13th? I don't remember. I know you said you be potentially willing, but I think
Oh no, I've seen it. I
oh,
have
you seen
seen
it? Okay.
I watched it last summer on trying to catch up on stuff. I like to observe slasher summer and do different like horror and slasher movies. So I watched the first three, I believe. There's so
Okay.
many of them.
Yes.
I actually don't really like the first one that much.
That's fair.
The second one's a lot better in my opinion.
Mhm. I agree with you on that. I think the second is much better than the first.
I still wasn't big on the third though. I just it didn't hook the movies didn't hook me the way the Halloween movies hook me or
Right.
Scream, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I didn't feel a lot of character development in those.
Oh, there isn't any.
Yeah, there's absolutely none, especially in the first one.
Yeah. I will say you did stop just before the best in this series. I would argue at least until it becomes like pure camp stuff with Jason X and Freddy versus Jason. But those are very different things from what the rest of the franchise is. In terms of like the original early films, 4's the best of them.
Then I will probably need to
Yeah.
go on and watch that one.
Jason X is cinema masterpiece, and you cannot convince me otherwise.
It is. It understands. So, Holly, for reference, Jason X is Friday the 13th in space. It is that one.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, no, Jason Voorhees is on a spaceship killing
Oh,
people.
he's on a spaceship. I was wondering if it was a planet, a space station.
No, no.
Okay.
He's on a spaceship 400 years later, killing a bunch of because they find him frozen in. I almost said frozen in carbonite, and that's not what it is, but it kind of is.
So we've
He's
taken
like in a
every
deep
form of
freeze.
logic and just thrown it out the window.
Absolutely. And it
Okay.
knows it and it loves it.
It is such a good movie.
It is such a fun movie. I will agree with that.
All right. I
Oh,
might
I've
have to.
I've definitely seen worse. Don't worry.
Oh, I've seen worse too. I've seen worse within the Friday the 13th franchise.
Mm.
5 exists. 8 exists. 8 is where he goes to Manhattan.
I'm just thinking of the very racist mushrooms in the Elm-Chanted Forest that think parodying Michael Jackson is a good idea.
I recognize almost every word that you said, but put in that order, I don't understand.
You ever seen a mushroom do blackface?
I'm sorry, what?
The mushrooms put on blackface and do a parody of Michael Jackson.
I
It's a
I don't know
kids'
what to
movie.
say about that. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be?
Look, it is the pride of Czechoslovakian cinema in the early 80s, maybe late 70s.
That explains a lot. Um, but yes, 8 is where he goes to Manhattan. Legitimately goes to Manhattan.
Okay. Well, I will need to check these out.
Yeah, no, this one is 8 is bad. 8 is
Okay.
really, really bad. That said, you should watch it because it's goofy. But
I love the no, 8 is bad, but watch it.
yeah, he gets on a cruise ship that somehow ends up on Crystal Lake and takes that cruise ship to New York City from an inbound lake. Yeah,
Okay.
the part that's bad about it is only like the last act takes place in Manhattan. So it's a false advertising. Most of it is him killing teenagers on the cruise ship. Anyways,
Anyway, Scream 2.
yeah, anyway, Scream 2. But yeah, I think it's weird to say. I think this is the best camp set Friday the 13th film in almost 40 years, even though it's not of the Friday the 13th film.
It's definitely my favorite of the Three Fear Streets.
Yeah, it is mine too by a hair. But I think that, I think it hits all the proper beats of a summer camp slasher. I feel very familiar because, like I said, we are not being shy about the fact that this is a Friday the 13th homage. From Tommy's, lack of a better way to put it, costume to some of the shots in the movie feel pulled directly from a Friday the 13th movie. We have everything but, well, I would argue you even have your version of a Crazy Ralph in Mary Lane. She's just a little bit more proactive, I guess, than Crazy Ralph was.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need that sort of unstable character who warns you about everything that's going on. And I think this film does a good job of putting its own spin on all of this kind of stuff. And yeah, adding some deeper stuff that they can do because they established it in the first film. I think this works really well, both as an homage and yet still standing on its own thing. Again, probably because of we have a pretty good group of characters here, I think, for the most part. And so much like 1994, next thing I've got is how do we like these characters? And I think the characters that were generally our characters in this, obviously Ziggy, Cindy, Alice, Tommy, Nick Good, and I put Sheila on the list because she is technically a character and has a little bit of an arc.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are just a whole bunch of bodies beyond that. Mary Lane, but she's only there for like a scene.
There's oh, I can't remember the name. There's like the mayor, but younger version of him.
Kurt.
Kurt, yes.
Yeah.
Is it Kurt? Because I think Kurt. I don't know. I'll be honest. I lose track of a lot of the other like adults, or not adults, but counselors, and which ones die and which ones don't,
Right.
because they are in that Friday the 13th theme, just kind of bodies with names. Not a complaint, not criticizing the film because of that, but like if I think of this movie, those are the characters that I think of. How do we like these guys? L, how do you like the characters as the main characters?
I mean, Ziggy and Alice, like, instant. Yep, no, I'm on board with them.
Yep.
Cindy really takes some time to warm up to because it is that very sort of over puritanical, almost like prudish
Mm-hmm.
type of character that you see. Sheila is just she exists.
She's the mean girl.
Yeah, she's the lead bully,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, it's like that could just be anyone. That's it could be a group of people. One person. It doesn't matter. It is not a character to me.
I mean, that is fair. Also, in fairness, The film doesn't seem to think she's a character because there's a point where it's just like, okay, we're done with Sheila. I don't even think she dies.
No, because she's a Sunnyvaler.
Right, but she just gets knocked out, left in the outhouse, and we never find out what happens to her after that, I don't think. I assume she gets on the bus, but
No, because the bus has left by that point, pretty sure.
she's just chilling unconscious in the outhouse to this day.
Wouldn't surprise me. She just has her own little, like, janitor's closet room in the mall
Yep.
because it got paved
Yep.
over. Like, oh, I guess I'll move here now.
Uh,
And yeah, see, Tommy almost isn't enough of a character before becoming a villain.
mm-hmm.
And at that point, like, it's Jason. He has no personality except here is an axe.
Yeah, because that's not his job is not to have a personality at that point. His job is to be threatening and kill.
Everybody talks about how lame he is.
Yeah.
How boring.
Legitimately, like when I was doing up the notes, Ella had to point out that I called when I was doing up the synopsis for 1994 that I called the Skullface killer Tommy, and my response to it was blandly attractive teen becomes killer character.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of me thinks that the moniker of being lame is because he's respecting women.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
like,
think they were
oh,
saying he's boring and doesn't have much of a personality because Alice.
but
said
it's
that
like,
at one point.
because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, my girlfriend doesn't want to do things. That's okay. I can wait. I am a good boy.
Yep.
And I think that's what would earn him that label. And yeah, Nick being a bit of a character in more so than that we've seen. It's like,
Mhm.
that's nice. That's gonna turn out differently, isn't it?
It sure is. Yep. Holly, how about you? What do you think of Nick Good?
Oh, what I think of Nick Good?
Yeah. I mean the rest of the characters too, but you know.
Okay, well I'll get to this in a second. So first of all, at first when I watched the movie before I knew everything, I did like him.
Right.
You know, I thought it was interesting to see a younger version of him. That said, I do have to say Ziggy is my favorite character in the entire series, I think.
Agreed.
But something I wanted to bring up on Nick Good, I had read like people were talking about the body count, and this is
Mhm.
something I agree with because I was trying to figure out if any Sunnyvalers actually died, which they didn't during the camp
Right.
massacre. It's all Shady Siders. But someone online was arguing that the old Nick Good died that night.
Okay, fair.
And so that was added in on the body count list.
Interesting.
He does show remorse when he's talking to Ziggy.
Right.
And he has a line where it's something like, everyone that I've let die. And she was like, you haven't let people die. And he said, but not you.
Right. Yep.
Another thing that I will argue is something that's always bothered me, but Shawnee actually brought this up last night. So the very end when they are being the sisters are being hacked to death,
brutally hacked to death,
very brutally, and he brings her back using CPR.
Right.
And I started going into my rant on that, and Shawnee was like, no, but it's Nick. He's the only one that would be able to bring her back using CPR because he gets what he wants. And I was like, I didn't think about it like that.
That's a really fair point.
Because Shawnee was saying if it was anyone else, then they wouldn't be able to bring her back doing that, obviously.
Right.
Because you can't bring someone back from stab wounds with CPR.
Right.
But because it was Nick Good, because he's the one that did this and he gets what he wants, and he wanted her to live.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair point because like if you don't think about it like that, and that is definitely something where I've been like in the moment, it doesn't bother me that Ziggy is brought back because that's horror trope 101 stuff. You shrug off stab wounds because something vaguely equating to medical administration was given to you. But it is bullshit if you don't think about it that way. That it's because it's Nick. Because there is no way. First of all, Ziggy gets stabbed way too much for anything to bring her back.
Oh, after a while, it's just one stab after another. Because I started counting, because I was rewatching this last night. I started counting at first on Ziggy. I lost track at around 13 or 14.
Uh-huh.
So it's more than that.
Right. She still does not get it as bad as Cindy.
Well, Cindy gets the axe to the chest and they just keep
Multiple
going.
times.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a good point on Nick. But yeah, what about the other one? Like Ziggy, I agree with you, favorite character.
Ziggy's fantastic. I would agree with Elle on Cindy. She took a bit to warm up to.
So here's my thing about Cindy, and I don't have her name, the performer's name. I think she is the weakest performance in the film.
Yes, I think I'd agree.
Now, I agree with you. When we get later in the film, and I don't think it's necessarily her fault. I think the character she doesn't have a lot on the page to work with the character in the early moments. And I think it's the scene when she and Alice down in the underground have their big kind of blow up. That's when the performer kind of comes into her own with that character. But before, and it's not just on the page, it's that some of the line deliveries just are off compared to the tone of what everybody else is doing.
It felt a little bit Brady Bunch to me.
Little bit, yes.
Mhm.
And that is absolutely a choice that can be made, but it's completely out of step with everybody else. Emily Rudd is the actress's name.
Yeah, it's like she accidentally went to the wrong studio and there was a Brady Bunch movie next door. And it's like, well, I'm here now.
Yep. Yeah, that's not anything against the actress. Just sometimes you make creative choices that don't pan out well. And honestly, it was probably on Janiak to like maybe tell her that it's not quite in sync with what everybody else is doing. And she ends up fine by the end, but still. Yeah, that was my thing with Cindy as a character. Character's fine. Character's standard, very typical kind of good girl. You know there's going to be some kind of trauma that's the reason that she's the way she is. I think that plays out okay. I think Alice is a great character. I agree with you all. I think he is certainly there.
He exists.
Of all the people in this movie, he's certainly one of them.
He is certainly one of them. He is, like I said, the blandly attractive white boy who snaps and becomes a killer. No, the other one. And yeah, I think they're pretty decent characters on the whole. Ziggy is, and that is both because she is the most interesting character on the page, because she has the most development as the character because she's the primary one, but also like Sadie fucking Sink is just killing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like she is. I'm pretty sure this came out before Stranger Things 4, didn't it?
That sounds right,
Yes,
but
it did. It did.
Okay. This sort of sets you up if you were a Netflix horror watcher because she does the same thing in Stranger Things. Season 4, I think, is the season where her character, I'll be honest, for me becomes the star of that show.
Yes.
Like I enjoy Winona Ryder's character and Hopper and most of the adults. I think the kids kind of get a short shrift in season 4 to some degree because it's kind of hard to like some of them. 11's fine. Nancy's great. I will always be a defender of Nancy as a character, but that season is 100% Max's season. And if you didn't realize what a performer she was in the first couple seasons, this sets you up really nicely to see what she's going to be capable of in Stranger Things because she nails it.
Yeah.
I feel bad because I had confused Sadie Sink with Molly Quinn,
I know who Molly Quinn is.
a different
I can
redhead.
see that confusion. Yes, she was the daughter in Castle.
Yeah, and
Yes,
it's like, oh yeah, I am bad with faces, aren't I? Ugh.
that's right. I can see the confusion though for sure. But yeah, so I know you wanted to put a pin in when we were talking about couple elements of 1978. Both the violence and the needle drops. Which do you
Yeah.
want to tackle first?
Okay, let me go ahead and tackle the needle drops. 'Cause this was also some of Shawnee's commentary because I asked them what they thought after 1994 on the music,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have an issue with it on the
Right.
like being on the nose. And then they also didn't have an issue with this one. They loved it for it, but they're saying that this one was even more on the nose because like the point is towards the beginning, the point that they play Don't Fear the Reaper,
Mm-hmm.
like when it's about to like go into color wars, like the Shawnee just started cracking up and it's like this is really on the nose right here. And it was just like 20 or 30 seconds of Don't Fear the Reaper. And there's other moments like the one that actually bothers me is when Tommy was attacked and he reaches back and like behind his head and there's blood and you just hear one line of the song. The first cut is the deepest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you hear. And then it goes away and I'm like, was that necessary?
You're not wrong.
Was that really necessary? This is not a musical. Like that was the only one that I think really bothered me
Yeah.
because they did Carry On My Wayward Son and I like
Mm-hmm.
that they came back to that one.
Yes.
That they didn't have to pick a new one. They at least came back to that one later on.
Yep.
And the only thing that really bothers me is when they just play teeny tiny clips of the song instead of going in because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
these are really good songs. You can continue playing it.
Yep.
But when we're getting a line or 10 seconds, it's just
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that it is less effective here. It doesn't bother me at all. But there are some things like, look, put Don't Fear the Reaper in a 70 set slasher because it's Don't Fear the Reaper and you have to. I don't think you don't have to, but it's almost expected. And
mm,
this feels like more what I was saying with 1984 avoided, which is let's find a spot to put Don't Fear the Reaper in because it's a popular needle drop, as opposed to feeling authentic. The scene necessitated the song, not the song necessitating the scene.
yes. Yeah, I agree
So yeah,
with
I
that.
agree with you with that. Yeah, it doesn't bother me, but I can absolutely see why it's less effective than 1994's.
I think I know why it feels as about as egregious because the 1978 flashback isn't the entirety of the film.
Mm-hmm.
The running time is 2 minutes longer than the previous one, but has 16 songs on its soundtrack,
Correct.
as opposed to the 17 of the 1994. So you have it all condensed into the flashback period. So although the whole length is longer, it's more in a shorter amount of time.
Correct. And I think that it's like Holly was saying with the first cut is the deepest. In 1994, it's all like mood, sour times, or Damn, I Wish I Was Your Lover. Yeah, the lyrics reference it, but those songs evoke particular vibes and moods. Whereas I think in this one, you've got first cut is the deepest. The Man Who Sold the World,
Yes.
as Nick is reviving.
That was the other
We are
one I
not
was trying to remember. Yes.
we're not being subtle here, guys. To the point that it almost feels like it's okay, we know what these song titles are. So if the song title fits the moment, we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like pumped up kicks for shoe commercials and not at all about school shootings.
Oh my god, I still can't believe that people do that.
Or Boomtown Rats, I Don't Like Mondays.
Uh-huh.
It's not about just because you got to go to work. This is also about a school shooting.
Yep.
Shh.
Or in a slightly less disturbing way, every fucking American politician who uses Born in the USA,
Mm-hmm.
which is absolutely an indictment of the way working class people were left to hang by the government in that particular era.
I remember the Top Gear special when they went through Vietnam, And they're like, oh, well, you have to drive this car that's playing this song all the time as your punishment. And kids, if you don't understand why this is a bad idea, ask your parents.
Yep.
Because I had to explain the lyrics to some people at work about that, because, oh boy.
Yeah. So moving on from the music to the murder. This film gives no fucks. Holly, how do you like the violence in this one?
See, this is more of what I'm expecting. Well, especially for a summer camp slasher.
Yep.
I love his something comment I'd made last night when we were watching it. Even if when he starts killing, even if he kills him on the first swing, he just keeps going.
Yep.
Because like the first kill, I can't even remember his name. Alice's boyfriend,
Ari, I think it is.
Arnie.
Yeah, Arnie.
Arnie, yes.
He immediately takes an axe to the face, and then
That dude is dead.
Tommy swings it 3 more times, and I'm like, dude, he's dead. But I guess you're just double checking at this point.
I
But,
mean,
yeah, and I do appreciate that they don't show it with the kids. Like, they show there's blood or the reaction
Right.
to it, or there was like a slight scene of, okay, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about that version of Nick dying that night. There's the scene where he goes into the cabin where the children have been murdered in,
yep.
and it's like body parts and blood, and he just starts throwing up, and it's like he regrets, at least for a moment, what he did.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's one of those moments I could really see the old him, or that transition, just start to die. You can see it in his eyes. And it carries
Yep.
through to the very end when he lies at the end and says, oh, just another shady cider gone crazy.
Right.
Yeah, you can see the transition, and I feel like it starts at that moment in the film.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, one of my favorite kills is honestly Gary's kill, because his head just comes clean off and his body just falls right down into the hole.
Sure does.
I like that one.
No, for sure. I think I agree with you. I'm glad that it doesn't show the kid massacres on screen. That said, I am very glad that it goes there too.
Yes. Well, it's a summer camp murder film. It's going, I mean, you know, in the first one it's going to go there because they talk about how tragic the camp massacre is in the first one.
But that's one thing that this franchise had the balls to do, that for the most part, there were a few minor exceptions, but for the most part, the Friday the 13th franchise, I'm making a distinction between kids and teens.
Right.
The Friday the 13th franchise doesn't kill kids.
Right. They just kill the counselors.
They just kill the counselors. Which, okay, I get it. Jason's coming back to murder the counselors because they misbehaved, etc. Jason 100% kills people who are not just counselors. So that argument doesn't hold water to me. They didn't want to get the criticism, understandably, of being a 1980s horror film. Yeah. That kills kids.
Yeah.
Fair. I think when a film like this does that, because again, 1994 doesn't kill any kids either. There was a potential with a couple of them, but at least specifically, I would say Josh and then Kate's stepsisters.
He is in the movie. I had looked it up. The actor that played him was actually like 20 during the film.
Well, that's...
Yeah, I was surprised, but...
Yeah.
I mean, 20 is a Hollywood 6.
Yes, but well, I noticed,
You're not
though,
wrong.
especially for 1994, everyone they got were in their early, if not later 20s on some of them, who just looked younger.
Yeah, that's how it works. For a lot of reasons, for labor law reasons and
Right.
a whole bunch of stuff. It makes sense. But yeah, I will say they all generally look like teenagers, which is better than I can say for the Friday the 13th movies. Some of those teenage camp... Yeah, exactly. Some of those teenage camp counselors, they look their mid-late 20s, maybe even very early 30s. But yeah, the gore in this, I think, is really, really effective. That that final double kill sequence is,
And it just keeps going and going.
and the Foley work on it specifically,
Mm-hmm.
the sound design is like, it is full on, like straight in the center camera shots of Cindy taking axe after axe straight to the breastbone, with the crunching and squelching, and so it gets to a point that it is uncomfortable
Right.
in a good way.
Does it?
Um,
Oops. Uh-oh. Look, I mean, I saw the bread slice and I was a little bit giddy and laughing, so...
So for normal people,
Yeah.
for normal people, it gets uncomfortable.
I mean, again, I will say it's entertaining, but I think it goes on so long, and again, this is not a criticism. This is the intent of that scene. They want it to go on to the point that it is over the top, that it is like, okay, that's about 5 axes too many. We know she's dead. Oh, we're doing it again? Okay. Which is fine. Like that I think it really, really works. And it sells, obviously, that she's dead, but it sells the brutality and tragedy of the moment, especially when that's happening at the same time as Cindy probably could have gotten away. The person that she sacrificed for is also getting stabbed to death. Really, really well done in my mind, the gore.
It's funny that you saying that it went on for too long reminded me of the Dear Sister sketch from Saturday Night Live.
Dear Sister sketch.
Yeah, where it's just multiple times people getting shot in parody of
Right.
the OC, I think it was.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it goes on so many times that it becomes overly comedic. I mean, it was already, but
Right.
that's that vibe that I just got from you talking about it.
Yeah. It's weird reference to pull into this, but it's a lot like, I don't know, have either of you seen Team America World Police?
Yep.
No.
So it is an incredibly offensive puppet action movie by the guys who make
Oh, I know what you're talking
South
about.
Park.
I know what this is.
There is a scene early on where the main character, I don't know his name, I'm not going to look it up, starts projectile vomiting. And it's one of those scenes that I know everybody has different sensitivities to vomiting stuff. For me, initially, it's funny. And then it goes on until it's no longer funny and it's uncomfortable and cringy. And then it keeps going until it's circled all the way back around to funny again. This almost does that. It never quite gets back around to, oh, this is fun, entertaining for me, but it almost gets there and it's effective regardless.
So I guess for me, with the horror and like the gore and action, I guess
Right.
it's weird because that is not a sharp axe. That's not going to
No.
be at peak performance. So yes, it would be more violent by necessity. Because if you think about all the other killers, what weaponry do they have? So I mean, you see the original, the preacher has like the hook.
Mm-hmm.
You have the one that's drowning someone in a river. So it's like, what weapon has he got?
Right.
Arms, I guess. You got the milkman one. It has essentially a stiletto.
Mm-hmm.
You got the kid who's got a baseball bat. Okay, sure.
Right.
Ruby's got a straight razor.
Yep.
Even like the Skullface has a knife.
Right.
So yeah, Tommy having the axe is like, yeah, it would be more violent. That's just how weapons work.
Legit.
But he's also physically more imposing than the rest of those. So there's a lot of like weight and substance behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that the 1978 does the possession better because Tommy goes from being relatively clean cut to looking like he's got a bit of a fever and like his hair's going stringy and everything. So it does more of that, the visual cues that something is wrong beyond the flies buzzing or just the out and out madness.
Right.
So,
That is actually really fair.
and they weren't as varied, the kills, obviously, because it's an axe, but
Mhm.
very satisfying in a visceral way.
I mean, they were kind of varied, to be honest. The Arnie gets a few shots straight to the face, and by the time we see him in the background, that is not a face anymore.
Mm.
Gary gets decapitated. Cindy gets
Axe to question.
hollowed out. I don't even know. Yeah, axe to question, exactly.
Yeah, because hollowing out has different connotations.
Okay, fair. And from what little we see of the gore of the kids, they look like full on dismemberment.
Mm.
Like there were just chunks of people.
I would argue that the best kill doesn't even come from a villain.
Okay.
Is in my mind, it's Cindy taking out Tommy with the decapitation because she doesn't get
Oh
all of
yeah,
it.
Oh yes, yeah, that's a really good one.
that's real good. Yeah.
Yeah, she does not get all of that. That's hanging on by sinew and skin and tendons, and oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
You could make a soup out of that, but don't drink it.
Okay.
Like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. No.
That kill is prime beef. You could make a soup out of it.
Yep. Fair enough.
Do not drink the murder soup.
Do not drink the murder soup. Subtitle of the episode. All right. So, sort of closing, looking at the two films as a whole. Let's talk about. I have related recommendations for both of them. Do you guys? What is your? Do you have related for both of them, or do you have just one in general? Holly, what other related recommendations do you have?
For 1994, I would go with Scream.
Uh huh.
Like I think the original Scream.
Right.
For 1978, I would go with like Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp's a good one. That's one. I feel like we should cover that one at some point because it's such a loaded film, but also it is such a loaded film. But yeah, no, both really good choices. Elle, how about you? What recommendations do you have in relation to
So I'm going to
this?
go a little bit obscure.
Okay.
There's a podcast that I listen to from Sanspants Radio. I'm sure I've mentioned them before for other things.
Mm-hmm.
They do Beyond the Map, which is their World of Darkness type of series instead of the D&D stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Within that, they have Tales from Handle Creek, which is kids on bikes, and Tales from the Loop systems.
Okay.
And they covered that 1994 vibe very well,
Right on.
with a little bit of the 78, because I think it's supposed to be set in like the mid 80s from memory.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, the first one is the what happens to a group of kids who find a mummy
Got it.
to make friends with for the summer. Then it's what happens to two kids who go to camp and there's aliens invading.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one is, there's witches at a mall.
Nice.
So there's a couple of parallels I might be able to draw from there.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
And so I think those would lean more to the 78 stuff. It is slightly more comedic, but it does capture the vibe still.
Mm-hmm.
For the 94 one, I actually have like you mentioned, Christopher Pike.
Yep.
Specifically, the ones I'm thinking of are the Remember Me trilogy.
Okay. I am
Uh,
vaguely familiar.
I may have covered it on a different show.
Right. Fair
But
enough.
it is the story of a girl trying to solve her own murder
Yeah.
and then getting a body from someone else to possess to get a new life for the other two books, which isn't problematic at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's about what I've got, because
Okay.
my media taste is weird but also limited.
But also, like those are totally valid choices.
Hmm.
I do have one for each. For 1994, Scream was definitely the first that came to mind, but I wanted to go a little bit different, and I'm going with the 90s high school vibes, and I'm picking Disturbing Behavior from 1998. This is it's a teen sci-fi horror film that stars James Marsden, Katie Holmes, and Nick Stahl, playing a group of high school outcasts that sort of learn that the elite group of their classmates might have something else going on with them. I haven't even seen this in several years. I remember that it has some clunky moments to it, but the cast is really great. And I always have a soft spot for it because it gets ignored due to the fact that The Faculty came out a few months after it. And The Faculty is probably the better film of the two. I do love The Faculty, all timer of a cast. But Disturbing Behavior leans into sort of the disturbing aspect a little bit more. And then for 1978, the obvious would be a Friday the 13th film, but I'm again, it's a film, a summer camp slasher that I don't think gets enough love, and it's called The Final Girls. This is very meta, more comedy than 1978 has. It follows this group of high school kids who get sucked into a 1980s slasher film that our lead character's mother was the star of. And the mother had died in a car accident. And so our lead character is sort of dealing with that kind of trauma and then has to encounter the character that her mother played. It's very funny. It hits the slasher notes really well, but it also hits its emotional beats really hard. And I think more people just need to see it because it didn't become the hit that it should have because it was largely released on VOD and undermarketed and all the other reasons that those films don't generally break out. But I've never seen somebody who's seen it that doesn't love it. In closing, what are our final thoughts on both 1994 and 1978? L, give us your final assessment on these two.
They worked well as almost standalones. I think 78 needed the 94 prequel to properly come into the light. But they also, without the extra bit at the end, could have worked, I mean, a bit differently for the ending, but they could have worked as a two film series rather than three. It obviously couldn't just be as it is.
Right.
But yeah, I think they had enough strength with a bit of a rewrite to stand by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So for 94, I ended up giving it a 3.5 weirdly misplaced bong posters out of 5. And
Fair.
for 1978, I gave it 3.5 leeches in your bathing suit out of 5.
Nice. Holly, how about you? Which way give us your final assessment on these two?
I mean, I think they're great. I definitely prefer the second one over the first, but I think they are both good. They set up most of the characters well. There are so many characters, some of them get a little overlooked.
Right.
But I would give 1994, I'm going to say 3 nostalgic murder malls out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I will give 1978 4 unbelievable life-saving stab wound CPRs out of 5.
Legit. I'm very much along your guys' line. I do think 78 is the better of the two, but by a hair. They are both incredibly enjoyable. 94 just has to, there's so much that it has to set up that it isn't able to go quite as full bore as 78 does. But they're both really good. They're both really fun, but actually work very effectively as horror films. There was, I think, one or two moments when I was watching, particularly 94, that there were jump scares that actually got to me, even having seen it, granted, like 4 years ago. But even having seen it before, there were some jump scares that legitimately made me jump. And if you can do that, good on you, film. 1994, I'm giving 3.5 dead shady ciders out of 5 because one of them did come back. And 1978, I'm giving it 4 full-on axes to the chest out of 5. So yeah, that is Fear Street 1994 and Fear Street 1978. Next episode, we are going to be covering, to no surprise, Fear Street 1666 and a trilogy wrap up, as well as what our hopes, our potential expectations, what we're kind of anticipating out of Prom Queen. I know I'm definitely hopeful for. I'm worried that that my hopes might be too high and it might let me down, but I'm optimistic.
We should build a bingo card.
I mean, that probably wouldn't be that hard, to be honest.
Yeah. See how we do.
Yeah, for sure. So that is next episode. If you want to stick around for next episode, you can find us at whatever podcatcher you prefer. We're on Blue Sky and Instagram if you want to find us there at Final Ghouls Pod.
And if you can rate and review, 5 stars is always appreciated. But, do what you like. Just vibe with it. We do read every comment, so if you could make it grammatically correct, that's good. But as the saying goes, if you can't say anything nice, give us 5 stars.
Yep, that's definitely how that saying goes.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you can find me at J Thomas 411 Mania on Blue Sky and Letterboxd and Instagram.
I can be found at shards@kind.social on Mastodon and Shard System on Letterboxd.
You can find me at Holly Culp on Blue Sky and Miniature Magic 18 on Instagram.
And you can find all of us playing role-playing games at Final Show Films on Twitch and YouTube. Elle, give us our horror book survival guide tip.
Today's survival tip is ask yourself, do I really want to float?